Hi, I'm Karen Greenberg, and you're watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it.
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Join Jake and his friends on a journey through pop culture of the past, where they interview professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Happy here with us. Thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Davenport. Today, as always, as everyone knows, our co-host, Chris Bixby. How's it going?
Doing good. Hello, everybody. How are you, Jake?
Doing great as always, Chris. Thank you for asking. And I'm sure a lot of you DC fans out there that know this person from throughout various projects that got to co-create and a lot of other things. And this is a very fun discussion. And I'm not gonna be the one doing this time. Chris, take us over. What do we have for today?
Yes, today we spoke with someone whose career consists mostly of writing, directing, producing, and even creating projects for Disney in the animation world. His name is Bobs Gannaway. Bob's created and co-created such shows as Timon and Pumbaa, Disney's House of Mouse, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, Lilo and Stitch's series, Jake and the Neverland Pirates, and many more, including some Disney things that he wrote and produced for that he didn't create, including co-writing the 2014 sequel to Planes called Planes, Fire, and Rescue. He also co-wrote the 1997 Warner Bros. Film Cats Don't Dance. These and more are discussed in our chat with Bob, so without further ado, enjoy our chat with Bobs Gannaway.
See you then. Hello everyone, welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive.
Yes, we're very pleased to welcome Bobs Gannaway to the show. Bob's happy to have you here.
Hey, great to be here.
Yes, delighted to have you here.
Yeah. Yes.
So to kick this off, we know who you are, but for those who don't, could you tell our audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
I am a animation person. I've been working in animation for a while, since I think 1992. I've worked as a writer, director, and producer of mostly animated series, and for the most part, Disney. Although I was at Hanna-Barbera for a while, and I'm currently at Skydance Animation.
Nice. Very nice. So before working in animation, what was your childhood like and how did you grow up?
I was raised I grew up in Oklahoma. I'm definitely a Star Wars kid because Star Wars
Ah,
came
nice.
when I was 12. That affected me a lot because actually my father had passed away that same year. So the sort of like the idea of escaping into a fantasy world was really welcoming for me at the time. I also loved animation. Grew up with the sort of wonderful world of Disney on every Sunday night. I also loved cartooning or comic books. I was a big fan of Charles Schulz and the Peanuts strips. I would
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, of course.
keep the newspaper every day and cut them out and collected those, and I would redraw them. I would had a pad of paper and I would redraw them. So yeah, so I always loved animation and cartooning, and then filmmaking. So this is way before internet, right? Hard to get information, but yeah, and so I said, like, I want to go to school where George Lucas went. So I ended up going out to USC Film School. So that's how I made it out to California from Oklahoma. Backed up my car and drove out here.
Nice, nice. So now did you always want to work in animation or was there like anything else you wanted to pursue at one point?
I always liked graphic design, so I always liked basically the way things are laid out on a page and stuff like that. But like I said, I was very much interested in animation, um, but I didn't really have proper artistic or decent artistic training. I can draw okay, but not great. And I never really pursued that. I actually ended up pursuing filmmaking more. I had a film, Super 8 camera when I was growing up and things like that. So I actually applied to Cal Arts and USC. I didn't get into Cal Arts, but I got into USC. So I ended up going to, film school, but ended up, I think if you pursue your bliss and you'll land where you hopefully will land where you want to be. So for me, the idea of working animation and actually directing animation is kind of mixing the two things that you love. It's filmmaking, especially now with CG. It's very much camera and lenses and things like that, but also the love for anthropomorphizing things and bringing things to life that aren't alive and the fun that you can have with that. So very lucky to have kind of combined the two things I like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of
I wish
course.
I had some sort of story about like I fell into it, but I actually actually was really interested in this and pursued it. So I'm happy, blessed to be able to and do what I love for a job.
There you go.
Yes, absolutely. So now I'm kind of curious now for Disney. What was it? How did you kind of got the first start working for them?
Um, yeah, this could take a long time to explain, but the simplest way, I mean, we could start all the way back to the beginning, but the simplest way is I'll jump to when I was working at Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera was still around, and they were forming the guy there was forming the thing they were going to call the Cartoon Network. Didn't
Right.
exist yet, right? And so there were a bunch
Yeah.
of us there working on a show called Two Stupid Dogs.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so Two Stupid Dogs was a bunch of basically people in a trailer out in the parking lot. It was Craig McCracken, Gendy Tartakovsky, Paul Rudish, Conrad Vernon, a bunch of other people. A list of everybody who's like working now. And uh, they wanted to do the Cartoon Network, and they needed shows. So they're like, "Hey, everybody, come up with shows." And a friend of mine and I came up with a show that was a buddy comedy. Um, and some people at Disney got heard of it, and we went over and just showed it to them just to say this is the kind of thing we're doing, and they're like, "Oh, we would love for you guys to come up with an idea for a Timon and Pumbaa series." So we said sure. So we came up with an idea for a way to spin off Timon and Pumbaa off the Lion King into a TV series, and we pitched it, and they bought it, and they put us to work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember the Timon and Pumbaa show a lot on Toon Disney and Disney Channel. That was a good show.
Right. Yeah.
It was fun, and just so you know, it's
Yeah.
like when we were at the time. I was mostly writing, and I had a friend named Tony Craig who was an excellent board artist, um, and when we were hired, they were going to hire us kind of as separately as a writer and as a board artist director, and we actually said we'd like to work as a team. We asked to be hired as a writing directing team because I wanted to follow through on the filmmaking aspect of it, not just the writing, but the actual post production, etc. So yeah, so we kind of made the deal to kind of be a creative team, and we went on to do several series there.
Nice, nice,
That's great.
nice.
That's
Absolutely.
wonderful. So for executive producing, for Disney for another series, which is one I want Dalmatians this series. What was that aspect like? From comparing to getting to go kind of co-create and writing for Timon and Pumbaa, and now you're doing like other series that kind of like executive producing for that other series. Can you kind of talk kind of like a little like
Well,
comparison doing that?
but when we would, working on, I can't remember exactly what working on Timon and Pumbaa, and then when that would start to, at the time that was a syndicated show on Disney Afternoon, and in general at that time
Right.
when a show had generated 65 episodes, it could then be syndicated. And go out into syndication, which was the sort of model at the time. So once you hit around 65 episodes, you were going to be kind of like that was probably the show was going to wrap. So you would start. They would already. There's a really good. A lot of companies, not all. They try to retain people they're hope see if they can get them roll them onto another project. So they had come to us to develop 101 Dalmatians series with Jim Jenkins, who had done Doug. And
I love Jim. He's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, super nice guy. And yeah, that was the next. That was, I think that I guess that maybe that was the next thing we did. I can't remember, but I guess it was. And yeah, so it was a great experience. And then that we had to do those. We had to do pretty quick. I think we were running maybe 2.5 crews or 3 crews simultaneously. So that became more of a creative leadership position in regards to kind of getting all ships to port that need to get there, and making creative choices that will maintain the quality of the show. That's why maybe we did some redesigning of the characters or some simplification of the designs, and working with Mike Moon at the time. Mike's super talented guy.
Nice. And that's actually a perfect segue. Talking about, working with Jim Jenkins, who, as you mentioned, had a career prior, with Doug and things like that. What was it like working with Jim on that show?
Oh, Jim was great. He was in New York, so he wasn't here. But his company, Jumbo Pictures, Disney had, I believe, purchased it, and he could speak more to it than me. And so yeah, no, Jim was great to work with. I mean, he's as lovable as Doug, so is that sort
Yes.
of Mr. Rogers quality to him. It's very, very
I could see that. Yeah.
very
Yes.
calming, and yeah, super nice guy.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's wonderful.
definitely.
Yes. So now for another creating another series, and what was it like, getting to kind of be involved in the creative process for Mickey Mouse Works?
Right, Mouseworks was really fun because I was at like right at the turn of the century, right? It was like 1999, 2000. And what was great about that was working with Roy Disney, because Roy was involved, and it was a lot of fun going to Disney and then working with the Disney. It kind of took the sort of like, I'm not working for a Disney corporation. I'm working you know, for Roy, and Roy would chime in on board panel or storyboards or things like that, and we would pitch him some stuff, and I would go visit him in his office, and so that was great. And then the whole sort of, at the time, they hadn't done any really, other than Runaway Brain, they hadn't really done a lot of Mickey, generated a lot of Mickey um, content. And he lives in these ancillary ways, but so that was exciting. Got and that was great. Like, again, working with Wayne Allwine, who was really the third voice of Mickey, right? You
Yeah.
had Walt, and then Jay McDonnell, and then Wayne, and Wayne was Jimmy's um, apprentice. So and so because the voice of Mickey has always stayed within the company, and yeah, Wayne, and then of course Bill Farmer, who's still doing Goofy now, and Rusi, who's as many, she's since passed away, but Tony Anselmo's doing Donald, I think, still. And so yeah, so it was great working with those voices, and that was the other thing he did, is like, by the time I'd gotten to this point, I was doing all the voice directing on the show. Sometimes in TV shows they hire voice directors to just direct the actors. And it's kind of that's fine. That's great if that's the way you want to do it. But for me, it's like, I don't want to put someone between me and the performance. I don't want to kind of translate through someone. So I started directing all the sessions on Mouseworks as well. And then yeah, that was great. Everybody had a great time. We had a really decent budget. It was a very complicated show to make because, see, in a TV show, especially in a TV series, just like in live action, people think in animation you can do anything you want. Well, you can, but you still have to draw it, and paint it and make revisions and iterate on it, etc. So if you don't have recurring locations, that's just a huge amount of work for your art department, right? So that's why a sitcom on a TV series doesn't go someplace different every week, because they don't want to build a whole new set, right? Um, it's the same thing to a certain extent in animation, depending on your budget and your schedule. But Mouseworks, we were doing initially, before it became House of Mouse, we were doing 3 shorts like 3 6-minute shorts and 2 minute and a half shorts or whatever they were. So that was 5 shorts in each episode, and there was very little overlap except maybe Mickey's house or whatever. So it was really a lot of work because of the amount of art that we had to generate to make it. So that was a big challenge on that. And then when we um, changed it into House of Mouse, or that it kind of kind of morphed into House of Mouse, and that became like the second version of that. But that's a good example of like, okay, well, House of Mouse, the actual um, location was a reused location. But the challenge on that one was we were populating it with all of the characters from the Disney films. And we didn't want those characters to look off model, so we had to do a lot of drawovers to make sure characters were on model. Anyway, whatever. I can go on and on, but that's some of the stuff I remember. But everybody had a good time. I mean, everybody had fun making that show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So now since you kind of already talked about, what transition from, from Mickey Mouse works to House of Mouse,
Right.
because House of Mouse is like is a show where all the characters come to one and all in the same show. So
Right.
what's the kind of like kind of have all these Disney characters actually going to be involved in the same same show together in such a one space like that. Because unfortunately you can't do something like that today, but back then you can do something like that. So what was the
Yeah,
that like?
you could probably do it today if you wanted to. It'd be if you had, but with technology, all the models and
Right, but it's just kind of like more
Yeah.
typical
yeah,
compared
yeah.
to
No,
Because
everything
Disney's
was.
mostly shifted away from like the 2D stuff. 90% of it's like CGI now.
Oh, sure, sure.
yeah.
Oh yeah, you couldn't do that in that sense. Yeah, you couldn't. You'd have to have CG and 2D characters together. Because one of the things I sort of prescribe to, and John Lasseter does as well, which is what the character was birthed as, what was birthed as is that character. That's the character. If it's 2D character, it's 2D character. If it's 3D character, it's 3D character. A good
Right.
example of that is when I was, just digressing for a second, when I did Monsters at Work recently, fairly recently, um, I was very clear that if you want it to be Mike Wazowski, there's two things there has to be. It has to be CG and it has to be Billy Crystal. Otherwise, it's not Mike Wazowski. So Mike Wazowski is a CG character, and the voice of Mike is Billy. So you have to have. If you don't do those two things, it's not Mike Wazowski. It's really close to him, but it's actually not him. If you want, we could probably argue about that, but I'd go like Mike Wazowski is Billy Crystal as a CG one-eyed green monster. And so anyway, so going back to the House of Mouse, that actually it was more about making sure everything was true and on model. And because characters like Cinderella, for example, are so perfectly designed one line off and they just can look really off model. And so
Right.
lots of drawovers, which is why sometimes the characters don't move as much because we wanted to be very careful. From a content standpoint, there was only one rule on House of Mouse, which is we wouldn't do any jokes that undermine the emotional core of the story. So you can't do a joke that undermines the emotional core of Bambi or the emotional core of any story. We weren't going to make humor that way. Otherwise, we pretty much had free reign to do what we wanted with the characters as long as it was and um you know in good fun, but
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah, of
undermine
course.
the heart slash emotion of the stories. And we wouldn't anyway. We wouldn't, but that was just sort of the only rule that was kind of we all agreed upon.
Right. So now this may be a tough question to for you to answer, but do you have any favorite House of Mouse episodes or shorts that were used in the show?
Um, I do. I think a fun one to, if you haven't seen it, is when Professor Von Drake sings about the seating chart for the House of Mouse.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a good one.
now it's interesting about
Okay.
that. It's the end of an episode, and what's interesting about that is we got, oh gosh, now his name is like we got, he had written a lot of songs for Tiny Toons, and man, his name is on the tip of my tongue. And he's a friend, and so I was like, hey, can you write a song and rhyme all of the characters' names? Um, or do a patter song with all of the Disney characters' names. Here's a list of everybody that's in the House of Mouse. And I swear within like a couple days, he had turned the song around, and it's really impressive because he's a really great Randy Rogel. There it is, Randy Rogel. I knew I'd think of it, I hadn't thought of it. And he did like he did like the songs for Tiny Toons, like the map song and stuff like that. So he's very good at writing patter songs. So he wrote that song. So I think that's a lot of fun because it actually has like 60 cameos or however many characters appear in it. That's fun. But I also liked the like Pluto Gets a Paper shorts.
Oh yeah, those are always fun. Yeah,
Right.
And that was the idea of like it was the idea of like let's do a little short that features each character. So let's just have Pluto get the paper, and something goes wrong every time. And so those were fun. Um, I'm sure I have a favorite if I thought about it more, but I just remember the Von Drake song being a real sort of like fun accomplishment. We liked Goofy, How to Haunt a House. That was a
oh
mouse,
yeah.
but the
Hmm.
interesting thing about How to Haunt a House is it was animated by the studio in Florida. So
Hmm.
that's an actually domestically animated, goofy kind of cartoon, How to Haunt a House. So it just makes it sort of unique.
Yeah, I also love the Mickey to the Rescue shorts because you kind of get to see this like different kind of like more heroic side of Mickey.
Yeah, that was a fun
Right.
way to do that. Yeah, and then yeah, because you have Mickey as the host, which is kind of his default thing, but then he actually takes his bow tie off and throws it aside. Um, but yeah, yeah, I liked having the penguins as the waiters. That was fun. So it was really fun just to go in and kind of like play with all the characters, and
Definitely.
everybody was happy. It was blessed by the studio to do it.
Yeah, of course. So now, but with House of Mouse, there are some specials that the show got to do. They got to be involved, which is Mickey's House of Villains and Mickey's Magical Christmas.
Right.
So now at the House of Mouse. What was it? Being part of those specials like compared to usual episodes.
Well, I mean, when we do something that maybe is to DVD, it would just basically be a little more time and money to sort of work on it. So other than that, we're using the same resources as the show, same team doing it together. So it's just like doing a special episode.
Yeah, and of course,
Right.
and the thing I like a lot about Mickey's House of Villains was it had like a lot of the really like classic Mickey Mouse shorts in it, like Lonesome Ghosts
Right,
and
sure.
things like that. Yeah, so it was nice getting to see those in there.
Yeah, I don't know why House of Mouse isn't on Disney Plus. Maybe it
I
is though.
know.
I know a lot of people have been like petitioning to get that show on
I
Disney
have
Plus
no
too.
idea why. I honestly I have
Because
When
it's not
it's
like
a
there's any
Disney
like
show,
it's not like there's any crazy rights issues or anything. Because I mean, it's all their characters.
yeah, should
yeah. So like, what? Why is not?
the
Yeah.
only character that we had to really negotiate with was, I believe, in an episode, there's Benny the Cab from Roger Rabbit. I think
Right. Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
that required I think, an agreement. But other than that, yeah, there's not, yeah, I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But hopefully it gets
I,
on
I
there
mean,
one day.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Fingers
fun.
crossed. I know. I mean, I'm sure if it's going to be on Disney Plus, I'm sure like the kids who are like first kind of introduced to that show, I'm sure they'll love it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not. I
Like
have
we
no.
do.
I have no idea why. I have no insight into that at all.
I know, like
Yeah.
when the show is like it's Mickey and me, usual characters on there. It's like, why?
Yeah,
It's
I
kind of one of
know.
those things.
Yeah, because all the movies the characters were from are obviously on Disney Plus. So it's like, yeah. But
Okay, it's like,
hopefully it gets
what
on there
about
soon.
that? Yeah,
Hopefully it gets on
Maybe,
there
yeah,
soon.
yeah, of
So
course.
so now moving on from House of Mouse, you also have done some work with the Lilo and Stitch franchise, starting with co-writing Stitch the movie, which was kind of like the pilot for the TV series that you would later go on to create. So what was starting with Stitch the movie, what was that like?
yeah, they wanted to do a Lilo and Stitch series, so they came to us, and then we do, we develop, the idea of, series. You're like, well, what can we do with a series? And you usually look for this at the source material for like inspiration, and you're like, well, why is he number 626? What happened to the other 625? It's that simple, in the sense of like sometimes ideas can just start with a question, and then so yeah, then we sort of generated the idea of like where are the other 625 experiments, and so yeah, so that was the sort of origin of that idea, and worked with Jess Winfield on that, and Tony Craig again, and yeah, and generated that idea. And so yeah, so that Stitch the movie launched the series where they're trying to sort of like recapture all of those experiments. And Chris Sanders did the voice of Stitch, which was great for him to come in and do Stitch for us. And yeah, so that was fun. Another just working your way through my life, I guess. But every show is fun. It's a challenge, and there's new um, finding new stories to tell with these characters, and everybody's always supportive. It's everything you think it'd be. It's quite fun.
Absolutely. What kind of goes into adapting, a TV series from a movie?
Well, interesting. It's challenging. With 2D, we don't we would have the resources from the feature in a sense of model packs and things like that. So so when you're doing something based on a movie, you have already a look of picture set, right? Because there's a style already for the movie and from the movie. So it's more like how can we expand the world without um while respecting the source material, really, to be honest. And so that's just what we do. We sit around and brainstorm and start coming up with stuff.
Hmm, nice. Nice.
Wish there was a secret formula, but there's not.
So now you also wrote and story edited for another TV series spinoff of a movie, The Emperor's New School.
Right.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure, yeah, that goes a little bit further back because Mark Dindal, who directed Emperor's New Groove, he's been a good friend of mine for a long time. If you go all the way back to before Hanna-Barbera, I think. Yes, before Hanna-Barbera, before I was working at Hanna-Barbera, um, Disney was, this is a bit of a digression but Disney was at the time developing a new theme park for Disney World called Disney MGM Studios. And
Right, yeah.
they were generating ideas. Actually, maybe the studio was already there, but they were going to add a new land onto it. And they were generating ideas for what would be in this land. And one of the ideas, of course, was Tower of Terror. Another one of the ideas, the one they didn't do, was a ride called Toontown Transit. You can find an image of it online, Toontown Transit. Toontown Transit was going to be kind of like use the Star Tours technology of like you would get on you're going to go to Toontown because one time they were thinking about instead of making a Disney MGM studio, or I'm sorry, making Tower of Terror at the end of the street, making it Toontown. So
Okay.
so how do you get to Toontown? Well, you can walk in or you can take the bus. And the bus was Toontown Transit. And you were going to go through a queue, and then you were going to get on a bus named Gus the Bus, and he was going to drive you to Toontown. And Gus was also, you find out, an actor, wants to be an actor, and he's got an audition while you're in the bus. There's an audition for a Roger Rabbit um, cartoon, and then he goes off-roading and ends up in a Roger Rabbit cartoon. So you take the tourists on, onto the on a through a Roger Rabbit cartoon. Anyway, so they were developing the cartoon for the content, be like a 3-minute cartoon, and the director of it was Mark Dindal, and I was hired as the writer of the cartoon, and so and then there was another guy who was kind of the creative producer named Donovan Cook. And it's a good example of, like, you get your jobs through the previous jobs. So Donovan Cook ended up creating Two Stupid Dogs, and he hired me to do, to write on Two Stupid Dogs. Mark Dindal ended up going and directing a movie called Cats Don't Dance.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I remember that movie. Yeah.
I ended up being one of the writers on Cats Don't Dance. So as began my sort of friendship with Mark. And so when they asked us, now jumping back to Emperor's New School, they asked Disney wanted to come up with another legacy show. So they had different people developing ideas for legacy based shows, or shows based on a feature. So I picked Emperor's New Groove because it was Mark's movie, and I thought it's a comedy, and it's a very broad comedy, so it can have a lot of fun with the characters. And so I developed that. Now, what's interesting, when I developed that idea, I started to write the outline for it. And I was like, just like a few pages to describe the idea for the show.
Right.
And I sort of wrote it out, and then I sort of read it back to myself, and I'm like, this just reads so uninteresting. Like, the show is interesting, but just the presentation is just not very engaging. It's like, it's too clinical. And so I decided to throw that out and take this and present it in the form of a memo from Cusco to the Disney executives on why they're going to make his show. So I rewrote the whole sort of pitch pages as a memo to the executives. And so the whole pitch was in Cusco's voice. And so it reads much more fun, because he's just presuming you're going to make my show. And when you do, here's what you're going to do, and here's how it's going to work. And don't argue with me. And so it ended up being quite an entertaining little pitch for that show. And then they picked it up, and we made, can't remember how many we made, maybe 39 of them. And then it was fun working with Mark, because I knew Mark, so I could share design ideas with Mark and stuff like that. So unlike the other features where I didn't really have much contact with the directors, with Cusco, I was able to just work, talk with Mark as a friend.
Nice. So now, kind of one of your longest running jobs with Disney, and well, perhaps maybe even your longest running job with them, was creating Mickey Mouse Clubhouse,
Right.
which was one of Disney's, obviously most successful children's series.
Oh yeah.
How did that show kind of come about? How were you kind of brought on to create that show?
Um, yeah, I wish it was exciting, but they said, "Hey, can you come up with a idea for a Mickey Mouse show for Disney Junior, or whatever it was called at the time? It was called Disney Junior, or, that's literally, they said, like, can you come up with a kids
Oh, I
show?"
think Playhouse Disney still.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
Playhouse Disney at the time, yeah.
Disney, right there. Can you come up with a Mickey Mouse show for Playhouse Disney? That was basically the ask. And I'm like, sure, let's crack that open. So that one was actually, I didn't work on it as long as people think, because I mean, I only worked on the first season, then I left. But I
Uh,
launched it. Same with Jake. But anyway, but going back to Mickey, yeah, they were literally like, can you come up with a show for for Playhouse Disney for Mickey Mouse? And so it there's a thing. Here's the thing. Uh, every kid, not I can't say every kid. Most kids love the idea of having a secret place that's their own,
oh
whether
yeah.
it,
Hmm.
whether it's a room, or it's when I was a kid, we had a fort in the backyard and things like that. You can go all the way back to, like, the honeycomb hideout from whatever cereal that was. Like, everybody loves having a secret place. So I was going like, well, it's called Mickey Mouse Club. Why don't we just put house on the end of it and call it Mickey Mouse Clubhouse? It's like, let's just take the history of Mickey Mouse Club and just put Clubhouse at the end of it. And then I think I did the first sketch. I drew a sketch of what it would look like, and I probably have it somewhere, but I drew like like those Mickey hats you get at Disneyland. I kind of drew that on the
Oh
ground,
yeah, yeah.
just the hat. Like so, it was like this
Right.
like dome shape on the ground with the two ears, and then I drew a door and a couple windows and and a couple other things, and I did a sketch, and I go and I showed it to my friend Tony Craig, who I'd worked with for so long, and we thought it looked a little weird because it just looked like half of a head had gotten buried in the ground because it looked like eyes in the mouth, and so he took it, I believe, and we kind of deconstructed Mickey into these large shapes that would be the clubhouse, and his arm on the ground, and the hand could be a balloon, and the slide you go backwards to get in, and then so yeah, so we literally, that was the second drawing of it, and then we had one of our we had a viz dev artist paint it, and literally, again, I probably wrote up a couple pages as a pitch, but we literally put up that picture and said, "Don't you want to go in there?" And everyone's like, "Yes." And then we got started making the show.
Nice.
And we did a pilot, but the basically the beginning of it was like, that's a place I want to go to. You
Hmm.
know, I want to go in there and what's going on, and this is going to be cool. And then what I did, having learned over time, like we talked about how hard it is to maintain like the quality on a show when you have to do so many locations and things like that. And we were talking about Mouse Works. When I was conceiving of the interior of the clubhouse, I wanted to use circles as a motif, obviously. So the pavement, everything, there's circles. The original idea was the floor of the clubhouse is kind of has cut lines of circles on it. So we can pop those circles up and down anytime we want to create anything we want. And then I thought, let's create. I love cogs and clockwork and things like that. So I said I like counterweighted things, and when you pull levers, this happens. So I thought, let's create a thing called the anywhere area. And what we'll do is we'll take a portion of the clubhouse, and you pull a lever, and this thing will turn around, and it will be whatever we need for that episode. So if we need Von Drake's laboratory, we can pull this lever, and there it is. If we need a bathtub, we can pull this lever, and there it is. So it saved us the idea of, first of all, it's more interesting and fun. And secondly, it saved us having to build out entire, like Von Drake's laboratory, a whole building like Mr. Rogers. You would go to a different place. And so it was more fun, more interesting, more creative than just building out a neighborhood of buildings. It kept everything in the clubhouse, and it was actually more production friendly because what you had was a very elaborate portion of a room. You didn't have to build an entire, you know, four walls and structures. So that was sort of the idea of that. And then, having not done a Disney or Playhouse Disney show, come to find out, when you write for a younger audience, especially a preschool audience, it's the opposite of the way you would write for an older audience. Like, older audiences don't want to know what happens, right? They want surprises and reversals and
Yeah.
reveals, etc. Preschool kids don't like that. They like to know kind of what's going to happen in advance. So, like, if you're writing a story, and if you go like, "Hey, let's go to Pete's birthday party," and then let's go, and if you just start going, the kids are like, "First we have to get over this bridge, and then we have to get through this forest, and now we have to get through, over here," and they're like, "When are we going to get to the party? This could go on forever," and kids get. Versus if you say, you have something like the Mouscadeur that generates this thing on Toodles, and there's these four quadrants, and once you've used those quadrants, you're going to get to your destination. So the kids have kind of a it's like it's like going on a trail. It's an 8-mile walk, and there's a marker every mile. You kind of know where you're going to get when you're going to get to the end. So that's an interesting thing I learned about writing for a preschool audience. Is it's nice for them to have some sort of gauge that lets them know progress. And so that's why we created Toodles. to sort of act as this kind of like, you know, thing that could go with them or appear whenever you say its name. Toodles is named Toodles because of to do this, to do that. A lot of people don't
Oh, okay.
that, but that's where Toodles' name came from.
Okay.
People might think it was Doodles, but no, it's like, for in order to do this, we need that. In order to do this, we're going to have to need roller skates or whatever. So that's where he came from. And then the idea was you'd come back and he would sort of nest into the Mouse Skidoo, which we had a lot of different names for. We finally came up with. Um, and then it would sort of like celebrate the completion of the task. And then yeah, then as a surprise, the whole wall rotates around. Have the place do something it hasn't done before. And then the whole wall rotates around and we go out and then have the clubhouse kind of go away. So it's a secret place that only we get to visit because we know to say the words that activate it. So I guess it just plays on your sort of wish fulfillment of a kid to have, I can go in the backyard, I can say these words and this magic place appears. I visit with my friends, we have an adventure, and then it goes away. So perhaps that's why it was, well received. But and lots of fun. It was even though it's a preschool show, still a lot of fun to write for.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely grew up watching
Yeah,
that show. It's a
absolutely.
very fun show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, likewise. Yeah.
Different kind of writing, like I said, it's different.
Right. Compared to like, like House of Mouse and, other things you got to do, but it was kind of like a preschool show that's kind of like more for the preschoolers. So it's kind of, of course it was different, for you again to be involved in a kind of different way, but I'm sure it was a lot of fun doing it anyway.
Yeah, and you have different standards and practices and things that you can do and not do. So
Yeah, like for example, House of Mouse had
Yeah.
things like I remember there was an episode where like Goofy's head got like stuck in the sink or something like that. Like just weird little things like that you can't really do in a preschool series.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, you got people that they have standards and practices that checks for that, and then you can negotiate. I did have a thing on MouseWorks once where I had Donald on a boat and then he fell in the water and they wanted me to put a life preserver on Donald and I just wrote back, he's a duck. And they said, oh, never mind.
That's
So
funny.
I had kept a list of all the sort of fun things, but in the end of the day, it's for good reasons for kids not to have things that kids can imitate and things like that. So
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Um,
then what
you know,
happened?
si yeah.
Then what I do?
Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I know. I mean, since we now we're talking about with Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, I know we kind of talked about that already with House of Mouse, but with Clubhouse, do you have any favorite episodes, that kind of like stick out to
Well,
you,
not
if you
not for
remember?
Clubhouse because for Clubhouse, I think I only did the first season, and then I think I left to go do Emperor's New School, actually. Yeah, I think that's actually the order, whether it premiered that way or not. That I think that was the order. Because I was like, because for a preschool show, from a writing standpoint, I'm like, um, I'd rather write for an little bit older audience, and and then the opportunity to do Emperors, which is a very broad humor and writing with for Yzma and Kronk and things like that, which are so much fun. Kind of harked back to kind of like the buddy kind of like writing for Timon and Pumbaa and things like that. So I left Clubhouse. I handed it off to my friend Rob LaDuca, who I'd known for a long time, and he took over the show. And did the same thing with Jake and the Neverland Pirates. I actually, when I was done with when I was starting to finish up on Emperor's New School, they came to me, same as with Mickey, and said, "Can you come up with a preschool show for using like Peter Pan?" I'm like, okay. Um, how about they have a secret clubhouse? So so I said, like, how about there's this island? I said I don't want to really set it on Neverland because that's like sacred ground. They can go visit Neverland, but why don't we give them their own location? So, and then why don't we use kind of the Lost Boys sort of idea, and then let's give them a ship that doesn't talk but somewhat sentient. And then let's create this secret hideout. Um, again with counterweighted stuff like to open this you have to pull this lever and then the barrel weights down and lifts that thing up. And so that was the idea there and Bucky. And so I ended up developing that whole show. And I listened to this group called Captain Bog and Salty on CDs when I was writing Jake pilot or developing it. And then when it came time to do the show, I'm like, we should just get these guys. And it turns out they were like this pirate band in Portland, I think, or
Oh
Seattle.
yeah, yeah, they're wonderful.
And they were hilarious because they're like one of the guys like works for the city. It was just their side gig, right? Their joke was we're a niche at the Renaissance Fair. Like, we're like a pirate rock band. But what's great about those guys was, and they could obviously speak to it better than me, but they're like, we play like parks and we play like night Halloween shows. And we're like, the music's the same, we just change the volume. And so it was very appealing and fun. So they ended up hiring those guys to sort of do the music. And that was fun because that was a cool, surprise for those guys just doing their thing. Right. And
Yeah.
but I ended up getting that show launched, but then I had an opportunity to go to Disney Toon Studios and work on uh some feature length things, and so I left that show and went, and I think Rob Leduca took over that show as well, and I went over to Disney Toons.
Nice, nice, nice.
Nice. Um, I mean, with Clubhouse, I do remember because you only were involved in the first season. I mean, I did remember watching
Sure.
that like the like an era of that show. 'Cause, that series went for for
10
like a
years,
while.
Oh
something. It
yeah,
went
Yeah,
for a long time.
they're doing more right now, I think.
Yeah, they're doing
yeah,
it. They're
yeah,
doing a
for
new
new
Mickey Mouse
show.
Clubhouse show. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they did the Mickey Mouse Funhouse thing. I hadn't,
right.
but and now I think they're doing more Mickey Mouse Clubhouses, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope it goes well. For that, what that turns out. Um, but I mean, going back with episodes wise, I do remember them. Like a Donald's big balloon race
And there's one where
where
like Mickey and Donald play like hide and seek or something. Like Mickey's trying to
Sure,
find
yeah.
Donald.
I couldn't remember. I wouldn't remember any of them, just because I only worked on the first season, and even those, I probably personally, I mean, I probably wrote some of them. I wrote the pilot, I'm sure, but I
yeah,
couldn't remember
Right. I
anything.
mean, it was a long time ago. It was like 18 years ago at this point. So it was like forever ago.
yeah,
You add it up between with all the shows they did at Disney, there's probably hundreds of episodes, so it gets
Oh yeah. They all kind of like blend together. Yeah.
it was fun.
yeah,
It's fun, but you sort of like you're always kind of like opening a new door to the next thing to see what and you learn something new on every show. So it doesn't become every show you can take the knowledge and the experience that you've learned on the previous show and apply it, and then there's going to be new challenges on whatever show you're on, so you continue to learn.
right, yeah. Um, I know there was like a yeah, because I remember there was like an episode that like talks about where basically like everyone like got the hiccups, where Don was kind of like Starlet and everyone else were were, were like joining in such a like a weird way. Fine, that was just kind of weird enough I remember that. And there's like a time where they actually did um like a like an Easter special, like Mickey's Great Clubhouse Hunt, which is also a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely.
And like like a holiday episode, yeah, like a Mickey Saves Santa. There's so many great episodes.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're gonna yeah. You do that many episodes of a show, you're sort of like, really exploring just about anything you can. It's fun
Right.
though.
Yeah. So with Jake and
Yeah.
the so with Jake and the Island Pirates, I also want to quickly bring up because it's interesting because talk about, Playhouse Disney to Disney Junior. Jake and the Neverland Pirates was kind of like the first show kind of when Playhouse Disney made that transition. So I think it's kind of interesting. I think that's kind of interesting in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rebranding of it, that doesn't have anything to do with me. We're just making the shows. And so yeah, I didn't really the rebranding of it didn't really affect me in any way.
Right.
Right.
Right. So now for feature films and stuff, you got to work on Planes, Fire, and Rescue, which was a sequel to the kind of original Planes. What was that like?
Oh, that was great. So going over to Disney Toons was great because again, you want to keep learning, and I had gone to film school and I actually had written screenplays before I started in animation. I'd written screenplays, feature screenplays for Disney and Paramount Pictures before I got into animation. And so I really wanted to do long form. Television's great because you really you come up with stories and you make it, and you there's a kind of a fun kind of urgency to the turnaround. But I was kind of looking to do something where I could iterate a little bit more on it. Where you get to you get multiple bites at the apple when it comes to story. And so the appeal of going over to Disney Toons was great, and they were creating that division under John when he came in. And so yeah, so they Clay Hall was doing Planes, and they already knew they wanted to do a follow-up. So I started working. So when in that kind of case, they'll go like, well, go come up with an idea for a sequel. And what's interesting about the sort of methodology and the culture that sort of John Lasseter sort of fosters is, at Disney and Pixar, none of the ideas come from the outs. Well, I'm going to say none of them. Most of the ideas don't come from the outside. They come from the director. Um, if your director has a book they like or something like that, that you want an option or something, that's fine. But the idea is like, let's have the ideas come from the director, and that way, because when you commit to one of these things, you're committing to like 3 years of your life or more making it. So you're charged with go off and come up with an idea, and then we do in features. There's a lot of emphasis put on research and basing things on truth um, on all aspects, characters, themes, everything. So I started investigating the airplane that Clay had decided to use for the crop duster. And when I did the research, I discovered that plane has two other major uses. One is reconnaissance airplane for the military, and another use is aerial firefighting. It's the smallest plane in the aerial firefighting fleet. It's called a seat, which is a single engine
Hmm.
air. And so and then I did a little bit more digging, and this is a little fudging the facts a little bit, but in general, crop dusters were the first aerial firefighters because they were trying to find something to do off season. So instead, crop dusting during fire season, maybe they could drop water. So everything just led to like a firefighting movie, and I presented that to John, and we're like, absolutely, this is the way to go because it comes from the character, it comes from the airplane. We're not just making something up; it's the truth. So then it was off to research, and I spent 6 months with aerial firefighters, especially Cal Fire here in California, and spent 6 months researching, hanging out with the firefighters, going to air attack bases, flying in helicopters, flying in planes, and learning everything about that world. And then you start to develop your story, and off you go, start to iterate. So it was great fun because you get to pick a subject, and then you're expected to go and become I don't say an expert, but to immerse yourself in that world. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
And then they were very excited about doing a fire movie because they'd never done a movie with this much fire in it. And it took us almost a year to figure out how to do the fire in a way that we could afford to do it and it could look good. Because an effects movie, like a Marvel film, might do every one of their shots as an independent effect. And in our case, we wanted to figure out a way we could dress the sets with fire. So we have a thing called the fire engine, which was a fire system that you could dress the sets with fire and control the fire, rotate the fire, so there wouldn't be any twinning and things like that. And yeah, it took a long time to develop this, our fire system, basically. Anyway, I
Right.
could go on and on. It was great fun.
Nice. So, as we're getting close to wrapping up, can you share anything that you're currently working on, at least that you're allowed to talk about?
Well, after Disney Toons, I went over and did Monsters at Work, which was great fun. I did the first season, but then I left Disney to go to Skydance Animation. And when I went over to Skydance, I was asked to sort of take the reins of a show called Wandla, which is on
Right.
Apple.
Mm.
So I sort of got Wandla going, but I came over to Skydance Animation to develop a feature. And so now I am finished up with Wandla and I'm developing an original feature at Skydance.
Nice, nice. Looking forward to those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. So,
Likewise.
so to wrap this up, the last question that Jake's about to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you very much, Chris. So, of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? Or in your own words, how would you define the word nostalgia?
Oh, well, that's hard to say, but it's trying, I don't know, it's like trying the warmth of remembering wonderful things from your past and the kind of sadness that they're gone, but you can still, what's lovely about animation or a toy or a thing like that is you can still get it out and feel the textures of it and remember the things that remember the times you had with it. So it's just a bit, it's bittersweet, right? It's both lovely and sad.
Of
Yes.
course.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
you're a 10 on. Well, Bob, thank you so much for taking time to do this interview. This was a blast.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Of course.
This was fun. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Hey guys, cheers. Bye-bye.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Thanks again, Bob.
Enjoy your
Take care.
holidays.
Bye.
Yes. Bye. Happy holidays.
It's goodbye from us as well. We absolutely enjoyed our time with the wonderful Bobs Gannaway. Keep on the lookout for more wonderful interviews coming your way. And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Be sure to follow Jake and the Happy Nostalgia team on social media, check out our website, and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.